Thank you all again. So, just a quick introduction. Now, for Humanity First, safeguarding means protecting the health, the well-being, and the human rights of the people that we are honoured to serve. So that means we need to enable them to live free from harm, abuse, and neglect. Now, as a charity and as an NGO, safeguarding is a crucial practice that we all must adopt when conducting our services. It's not an optional consideration, it should be at the core of all that we do. HFI is in the process of creating an international safeguarding function, and our aspiration is that all branches shall inshallah have a designated safeguarding lead too, so that localized team members can be trained. Now, with me today, I am pleased to have Nadeem Rahman Sab. Nadeem Sab is currently serving as the National Education or Talim Secretary and National Designating Safeguarding Lead for the Ahmadiyya Muslim Association, um, or the Jamaat. Now, combining this with his profession as a teacher, I'm really looking forward to learning from his expertise today. Nadeem Sab, over to you. And if you could just advise everyone in terms of the etiquettes of asking questions, that would also be great too. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum, Jazakallah, Taisab, and Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, for coming today and allowing me to talk for a short time, just to convey some safeguarding points to you. In terms of questions, I mean, if you just raise your hands like I've just done on the screen, I'm happy to interrupt, especially as sometimes things come to your mind, and I'm happy to deal with them as we go on. The first safeguarding training is quite long and laborious in that we go through a lot of the law aspects and other aspects like that. So hence, I'm really keen, if there is anything you want to say, you feel free to do so, and you can just raise your hands. I can see we've got 19 people, so what I'm going to do without any further ado, I'll just start off, and then inshallah we'll take a few breaks here and there. I'm hoping we can finish this within an hour, inshallah, if time allows us. And if it doesn't, then inshallah we can continue on if needed. So I take it everybody can see my screen, and I can't see obviously the Teams window anymore, so I can just see the PowerPoint. So if somebody could say G or yes, then I know you can see the screen, no problem.
Right now, I can see your team screen, not the presentation.
Oh, really? Oh, well, I've got the presentation.
I can see you. I can see your presentation screen with the basic safeguarding training.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. So, as I said, this is basic safeguarding training. There's quite a few levels to it, and I think it's important right at the beginning we just make sure all of us are aware that this is basics, and we will be covering further things in the future, I'm sure, through Humanity First. Nice and easy, this presentation is about safeguarding and the protection of children, and it is very sensitive, and the topics can affect you personally. So I'm totally happy if it does affect anybody, or it may get some negative well-being feelings in anybody. Please do feel free to leave at any time. It's not a problem. You don't need to make it evident and tell anybody or get permission. I'm happy for you to leave. It's not a problem, because these things are sensitive and they can hit nerve as such. In a nutshell, the presentation is just for practitioners within your organization, so you can just look at safeguarding of children, young people, or adults. And of course, this has to work with your policy. It's very important that the policy follows everything that we cover, and it's important that the policy, international policy and countrywide policy, all have things. Of course, my bias in this presentation will be more UK centric, obviously, because I don't know the different laws in different countries, but I am sure there'll be similar laws, similar things in different countries, which I think after this training sessions, people can research on and have a look at. Very quickly, I mean, the Children Act 1989 is the legal framework in the UK that provides safeguarding for children. And I say children, of course, there's young adults involved as well, but I shall get onto that later on. Just to give you an example, in the Children's Act 1989, in section 17, it defines what the child in need means. Section 47 sets out the statutory duty for child protection inquiries. And you can see, like section 17, the definition it gives you there. I'll just read the first one. I won't bore you and read every single thing, because I'm sure this PowerPoint will be available for you at a later date, so you can go through it yourself. But a child shall be taken to be in need if he or she is likely to achieve or maintain or have the opportunity of achieving or maintaining a reasonable standard of health or development without the provision for him or her of services by the local authority under this part. So, you can see anybody who is in need is somebody that's being affected by something and won't have the ability to perform how they should. Again, just very quickly, just section 47, the definition of child in need, it gives you there. It's, where it is suspected that a child is suffering or is likely to suffer significant harm, and then it tells you what needs to be done, etc., etc. So looking at, children and looking at safeguarding in the UK, there are various documentations available that help you making sure your policies, making sure all the key information is available for you. I've just listed two there. And the point I really want to make here is, if I move this far out of the way, safeguarding and child protection is everybody's responsibility. It's not just the management, it's not just the workers, it's everybody's responsibility. Anyone who works with children or vulnerable adults, it's your responsibility to make sure children are safe, adults are safe, and you are protecting them in every way, shape, or form. Again, these references will be available for you at a later date, so you can definitely have a look at them. That was just obviously relating to children being safe, especially in education. Um, of course, education can be related to the charity sector quite easily, and you can use the same rules and responsibilities there because you're in charge of children or young adults. There are further legislations that exist in the UK, and I've just named a few here. Vulnerable Groups Act 2006, Female Genital Mutilation Act 2003, Children and Young Persons Act 2008, etc., etc. So there are various laws in the UK that are under safeguarding. Again, in your relevant countries, I'm sure there will be other laws that you could easily act out and say they're under safeguarding. So safeguarding is like an umbrella, and you've got all the different parts of safeguarding that are there to protect children and adults. And especially for charity, you go to different countries, you see different people, you don't know what people are like, you don't know what they go through. So you have to be very careful at knowing all the different aspects of safeguarding and how they may affect. Of course, I can only see my screen, so if there are any questions, I can't see the hand being raised. Please feel free to interrupt. I'm totally happy for you to interrupt so I can speak to you, and then I can minimize the PowerPoint screen and go back to the Teams. Just moving on
Just
into...
one from me. Just one from me. Obviously, with an international audience, there is, of course, going to be a national-based versions of the UK legislation. Every country will have their own as well, worth looking into.
Of course, absolutely. Of course, every country will have a different permutation of the law. Some might call it something different. Absolutely. So you're right. I would suggest after the training from the different countries, people do look into things like that and start gathering the information so their country policy can reflect that. Okay, moving on, I think, as harm. Walaikum
I
salam.
think perhaps you're not able to see the hands up. I think people are putting their hands up. Perhaps you can't see that. And I was just wondering if you are actually going to keep an eye on the chat as well, or someone else is going to do that for you, because I'm sure lots of people will be requesting support or making observations or comments in your chat. Jazakumullah.
There's only one
So
chat there.
I'll be doing that.
Yeah,
Sorry,
there's
I'll be
only
doing that
one
for
message.
Jazakallah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only one message from Seti Saab who says there is an updated Act for 2004, I think it says. Yeah, which I don't know what they mean by that.
Um,
I think, Tyler, your connection's very weak because you're just freezing up and you're sounding like a dog.
and then we'll take it from there.
Sorry, I couldn't hear anything there. Yeah, as I said, you sounded like a bit of a Dalek, but if you want to repeat, you can. No. Okay. Moving on, serious harm. Harm exists and includes and is not limited to serious, be it long term or even short term. Children, vulnerable adults, their mental health, intellectual, emotional, or social behavioral development, it affects that. Again, this is a UK definition under the Working Together 2008 policy. And again, every country shall have their own version, I'm sure. If not, the international humanity first policy can obviously, if it's based in the UK, can use this as an example to make sure that the definition of it is there. There are obviously lots of types of abuses. There's four: physical, emotional, sexual, and neglect. And what I wanted to do now, and Saab, you can tell me if this is practical or not. I wanted to put people into maybe little groups and they can talk about each type of abuse for about 3 minutes, come out with a very quick definition, and then they can present it to the rest of the group. If that's practically possible, I don't know. If I stop the share, I can try to see how many people are here and whether that's fine with you. So we have here 30 people.
Can you hear me?
So yes, I can hear you now. I can hear you. So we've got 30 people there. Even if we put 4 people in a little group, give them 5 minutes, and the 4 simple definitions they can find out and come up with a very quick definition of what they are and maybe some symptoms, and then report back to everybody.
I think we're having some technical challenges with Teams at the moment. I think could we have just one central forum? That's okay. Just invite everybody, especially with some connectivity issues that some people are having as well, which they're messaging me about.
Okay.
If we just invite people to share their inputs.
Okay, so why don't we play it like that? I'll share my screen again, and what I'll do is, if it's all right with you, if I could ask everybody, if I give you 5 minutes of peace away from my voice, and if you could spend 5 minutes looking up what physical abuse is, emotional abuse is, sexual abuse is, and neglect is, and in 5 minutes we'll come back together again and I can pick people and you can share what you have found out. How's that sound? I'll pause my screen and my voice, and it's 12:47 in the UK, so at 12:52 I'll come back and then we can go through some definitions that you have found out. We've had about 5 minutes roughly just to have a little research by yourselves just to find out what physical, emotional, sexual, and neglect are. I can either pick people or being a teacher, that's what I usually do, but I realize I'm dealing with adults here rather than children. So if I start off with physical abuse, does anybody want to raise their hands? And we can start off with that. And I can see Dauda, Raji, I think, but forgive me if I pronounce your name wrong. Could you tell me what physical abuse is, please?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Walaikum salam. Walaikum salam.
From your introduction, I think safeguarding training is towards protecting the rights and the interests, especially of that of the children and adults. When we talk of abuse, abuse is a wrong way or a harmful way of doing something. When we talk about the children being physically abused, that is why or when, instead of protecting the children, the other way is what is done to them. That is what can be seen physically, for example, in the way of some using beating to correct the children or scolding them when they are supposed to be disciplined or to be trained with love. And looking at the other side, that is we'll quickly speak on the sexual abuse.
So I'll go to somebody else for that, if I may. If I just deal with the physical abuse, it was interesting you said that to correct them. Yes, you're right. In some societies, people use physical abuse because they think it's a method of tarbiyat, shall we say, or they think it's a method of correcting children. Whether it's for correction or for whatever reason, it's obviously recognized as abuse. So physical abuse, usually you can see markings on the body. Usually you can see, some sort of long-term abuse has occurred to them. So yes, physical abuse is the action of somebody physically hurting a child for whatever reason. Jazakallah Daudas Sahib. If I move on to now emotional abuse, would somebody like to raise their hands, or I can pick someone from the list? Let's see if somebody raises their hands, or I'll just go to somebody.
We have
Have a raised hand. Yeah, I would say anything emotional is around control of behavior. I think control is the operative word in terms of intimidating, harassment, coercion. Those are the examples that come to me immediately. But yes, I think I would say emotional is very much part of control.
Yeah, well, all types of abuse are controlled, aren't they? I mean, physical abuse is controlled as well. So what is emotional? How is emotional different from physical?
I think it plays on the mind of the child. As a social worker, I would be aware of that it sort of is upsetting and it's demeaning.
Sure, absolutely. I'm sorry for coming back with another question, is because, unfortunately, all forms of abuse is a method of control, and emotional, like you rightly have said, is, there is more of that emotional aspect. So you won't be able to maybe see a physical mark on a body or, a bruise on a body, but, there will be other ways that the abuser is obviously trying to control that person. So you're absolutely right. Emotional is probably the harder one to identify because people obviously keep their emotions inside, but probably more damaging because you can't see the physical signs. So lovely, Jazakallah, Jabeen Saiba. Let's move on to sexual abuse. Anybody would like to raise their hands on that?
I think we can try Rabia Saiba from the HF office, it says here in the comments.
Okay.
Would you like to give some input?
Yeah, Rabia Saiba, do you want to go for it? Of course, in an education settings, I wouldn't usually let people get away with it because part of the training means that people have understood what we're doing, and that's my way of finding out. So, but as it's online and it's international, I can understand. So, Rabia Cyber, would you like
Yeah.
to help us?
Okay, yeah. It's forcing to show private parts or forcing them to touch their own private parts, or the abusers and rape. And they think that's all included in sexual abuse.
Yeah, so you know, especially within our community, it's a very taboo subject, isn't it? Well, safeguarding in itself is unfortunately, but yeah, you're right. You know, sexual abuse can be touching, can be, you know, even just talking about sexual words, sentences that can also be construed as sexual abuse. So yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, the use of sexual methods of abusing somebody comes under that. Jazakallah Rabia Cyber. And if we just go.
I would just add that it's a taboo subject in all sort of cultures and communities. It's just that there's a lack of knowledge and understanding around those issues for some people, and some people have gone through a cyclical sort of generational sort of abuse themselves and can't get out of it. So I would say it's a taboo subject for all, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Let's move on to neglect. And I can see Amina Cyber's hands up. Kari Amina Cyber, your hands up. Do you want to enlighten us with neglect?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yeah, I wanted to give a definition of sexual abuse.
Okay, go for it. Go for it. Do
Yeah.
that. Don't worry.
Yeah, it is vulgar touches, talk, and sight
Okay,
to
good.
children.
Very good, good. And of course, it could be for young adults as well. It doesn't have to be for children. So, Jazakallah Shukriya. And if we go to neglect, anybody wants to raise their hand for on neglect? Jabeen Cyber, I think your hand's up. Yep.
Exactly. I would just say to that, that's actually not meeting a child's basic needs. So it would be an adult, I suppose, involved in that as well. They would have more choices. But I would say for a child that is just not meeting their basic needs, like food and shelter and warmth and loving, etc.
Excellent, excellent, very good, brilliant definition. I mean, you know, unfortunately, neglect can play quite a wide range of different aspects, and as Jabeen Cyber has said, you know, it could be from the basics of food, it could be, you know, where you're living, how you're living. Unfortunately, I can talk about the UK. Sometimes it happens without even parents or the carers even realizing they're doing neglect. So it's quite a underlying issue that applies to some people that unfortunately they don't even realize that it's neglect. And as you know, if you look at the basic needs of a child or a vulnerable adult, you know, we need to provide them food, shelter, and all of those aspects. So Jazakallah, excellent, Shukriya Board. So if I just wanted to get some participation there. Jazakallah, sorry for putting you on the spot. But yes, I think it's important rather than just hearing my voice, you start doing searches, looking up things, and realizing what you can find out there. That was the purpose of it. Moving on to other areas to consider. Again, this is from somebody, I think it needs to be muted. This is looking from a UK angle, FGM, mutilation of female. We've got forced marriages, I know in the UK is an issue. Prevent in an issue, making sure children, especially or young adults, aren't getting extreme and getting into aspects of life that's construed as being illegal. Child sexual exploitation, criminal exploitation, we have county lines in the UK where children are moved from different areas to sell illegal drugs. That comes under criminal exploitation. Domestic violence, DV, is an issue which unfortunately affects a lot of community because unfortunately husbands think they have a right to hurt females. And then obviously a very big issue, especially with children, is online abuse. Now, of course, all of these can affect charities. Online, it wasn't too long ago we heard a very major charity being affected by some form of abuse that was happening. So all of these do affect, charities and people who work in charities. I was going to ask again people to go and find out what these are, but what I will do, and you can guide me. I was going to skip that and just move on, or would people prefer I give another 5-10 minutes and people can find out what these are?
I think perhaps press ahead, just to
Okay.
define what these are. We have a question from Mahmoud Qureshi Saab from USA.
Okay. And a question, please. Hanji.
Yes, I like two things. With abuse, yes, we are focusing on child abuse, but there is also elderly abuse. So in the US, where elderly patients or people who have memory problems and they are abused by people who are caring for them, whether in care homes or whether at home. So that, and then in the US, every state has different laws. In Connecticut, there is another type of abuse which is called financial abuse, where somebody is controlled with financial means, and that is considered an abuse.
Excellent.
So
I mean,
to add that.
no, Jazakallah, Allah bless you. You're absolutely right. And when we were making the Jamaat policy, our version 2, we included these items because you're absolutely right. Financial abuse, elderly abuse, is something that, for example, and I'll just take this opportunity, if an adult is of sane mind and chooses not to take their medication that they should, and we, as maybe children, want them to take medication, and we ask them to take medication and maybe put it in their food or whatever, that is also abuse. If they are of sane mind, we are not allowed to do that. So, you're absolutely right. Jazakallah for bringing that up. And as I said, when we were making the Jamaat policy, our version 2, we included this in it because we were realizing that there were aspects that were being covered by the policy, like what you rightly said. So Jazakallah, Allah bless you. Obviously, online abuse, unfortunately, adults and even children, go online and they don't really know how to use online facilities properly, or they just use it in a negative way. That is very big. And, a lot of people do rightly get caught because they distribute things and then they circulate things. And what I'm going to do is very quickly just go through issues which I know in the UK is big, and that is, spreading of nude or semi-nude images via online services, whether you use WhatsApp, Telegram, whatever. Maybe it could be a video demonstrating how, a child is being hit, doing something not wrong, and that is abuse as well, because why are you spreading the fact a child is being hit? So it's something I think all of us should be fearful of, and making sure we do not distribute. In the UK, it's called distribution, and there's actually a law banning that. So, if you distribute something, even if you're distributing it to show, how bad it is, it's something you could get in trouble for, and it's illegal. So again, in the country, I don't know what different countries' laws are, but I certainly know in the UK, we clamp down on this quite heavily. And I do know in schools we have issues whereby, you know, children are distributing them, and what the police do and what actions they have to take. So I just wanted to have a very small section on that, because I think sometimes, unfortunately, people think that isn't in abuse, that isn't classified as something that's serious, but it is. And you can see from the slides the different information that I'm giving there. Moving on, there's also aggravated incidences, intent to harm. Cases arise from conflicts, for example, like breakups or fights between friends. And, you know, they are things that can be classified as intent to harm. And, you know, especially if exploitation of younger people or vulnerable adults exist. Reckless misuse, you know, intent of harm, but images are taken or sent without knowing. Not too long ago, I had a case to deal with, which was exactly this. So it does exist, unfortunately, and it's something you have to be careful about. And adult involvement, you know, images being solicited by adult offenders, immediate reporting to the police in the UK. Again, you know, unfortunately, some adults might think distribution of such material is fun, but it isn't, and it is a breaking of the law in the UK. Moving swiftly on, again, I'm deliberately not going into these in depth. In school, I would. I'm deliberately not, because the policy should be covering this. The policy should have in-depth definitions. Policy should tell you how to deal with them, and I don't want to, you know, circumscribe the actual policy rather than me giving you extra things. There are other things like experimental instances, romantic instances in which young people or vulnerable adults have ongoing relationships, make images of each other, share them. And especially, I would suppose, you know, for charities, if they're going to different countries, meeting different people, you know, have to be very careful of that. That's, you know, something like that isn't happening, because, you know, some people are maybe in a need, and others are in the power of they can provide. So I have to be very careful of that. Sexual attention seeking, you can see, and then there are other aggravating elements that could come about. Again, you can read this at your own leisure, and make and look, do your research or anything you want to in that respect. Some definitions, especially in the UK, every year Ofsted, the government, come out with new focuses they want to focus for that particular year or two. And one of the key aspects at the moment is peer-on-peer abuse, any type of abuse between peers, friends, associates, you know, and it could be referred, and it could go into sexual abuse, or it could be anything else. You know, I know in the workplace, if bosses aren't treating the workers in the correct way, that could be classified as peer-to-peer abuse as well. And it's definitely something in the UK they're concentrating on, because it's felt that that is coming out more and more. You've obviously got sexual violence and harassment, which we've, to a very small extent, covered sexual abuse, harmful sexual behavior, developmentally inappropriate sexual behavior displayed by children or young adults, which can be harmful. Just moving on to sexual violence and harassment, here's a little table I created. It shows you.
Can I just add, in terms of the social media, I think a lot of our parents need a lot more support in terms of navigating the social media. I mean, they have no idea about, you know, controls and passwords and, you know, protecting sort of issues on social media. So I think that also needs to be taken into consideration, that a lot of our parents don't have that ability or capacity to actually understand social media and then thereby protect their children.
Jabin Cyber, thank you very much. You're 100% right. For quite a few years now, I've been doing quite a few presentations on social media. You hit the nail on the head. There's a big age divide, isn't there, with adults versus youngsters and knowing what to do. Myself, I am COP trained. I am trained by the police for being online and looking at things. And, I couldn't have said it better than you. There is a massive divide. And also, I think role modeling as well. I think a lot of adults think they can spend hours on end on social media, and then when they turn to children and say, look, stop using it, they don't see children learn from the adults. So I think you hit the nail on the head there, and you're absolutely right. Jazakallah. There you go. So yeah,
So one question from Yusuf now.
Okay, yeah, fire away.
Yeah. So Yusuf's question is, in the humanitarian context, as volunteers, we need to be mindful of this peer-to-peer interaction, and abuse could be perceived by other actors and benefactors on how we treat them, speak to them, and deal with them. Also, how we use information and data on social media is an important issue. There have been issues with the UN and other agencies where NGOs have abused their potential and power as providers on those who are vulnerable. Remember, in the field there are cross-cutting issues that we need to be aware of and how we do things.
Yeah, absolutely. Jazakallah, Yusuf. Excellent. I mean, obviously, Yusuf yourselves have got more of a context with humanity first and charity, and you're absolutely right. I appreciate that because your knowledge in that capacity is excellent, and you're absolutely right. Especially peer to peer and having relationships with people, because charity is built on relationships, isn't it? When you go to another country, you build that relationship. You want to make sure you can take care of them. So Yusuf's got it in one there. So excellent. Jazakallah, brother. Appreciate that. So just moving on from the consent part, freedom and capacity to choose. It's an important note. Any child under 13 can, and this is according to the UK, any child under the age of 13 can never consent to any sexual activity. According to the UK, the age of consent is 16. Whether we agree or disagree with that, that's in the UK. And sexual intercourse without consent is rape, as simple as that. And I think that's something we all probably know already, but we need to make sure we preach as such. If anything does happen, if a fellow worker is involved, if somebody is on site doing something and you hear something, I suppose the key is, what do you do? And unfortunately, or fortunately should I say, your policy has to tell you what to do. Very simple. You shouldn't be looking at my PowerPoint and saying, right now I know what to do. Your policy has to tell you. And it has to spell out exactly what an individual does. In a nutshell, the policy will say something like, you have to listen if somebody's telling you something. You have to explain things to that person. You then have to pass it on to somebody in charge of safeguarding, who can take risk assessments, can evaluate things, can see where we need to go. It has to be recorded, and never do you promise confidentiality. Never do you say to the person, I'll keep it a secret. You always tell them, I have to share this. And you need to do that to protect yourself and the individual. So your policy will spell out these 5 bullet points I put there, and I put them very loosely. But in a nutshell, listen, explain, pass on, record, and never promise that you'll keep it a secret. And as I put last point there, follow your policy. Everybody in HF should know that policy literally by heart. Where you go, what you do, how you do it, etc., etc. because that is, mind upon your Bible as such, in terms of safeguarding. Handling disclosures when somebody tells you something. Again, I've had to deal with quite a few of these over the last year or so. There's some do's and don'ts, you know, in terms of do's, like I said, listen, take it seriously, reassure the child or adult that they have a right to tell you, you know, say what will happen next. Again, depending on the structure of your policy, you either tell your designated safeguarding lead, DSL, or whatever you choose to call that person, or your deputy, you decide in your policy what you will call that person, and make sure you keep records. I can't stress to keep the record the same day. You know, you leave it a day, especially when you get to my age, you know, the brain starts going and you do forget things. It is so important you record keep, especially if Khuda Khasta, Allah forbid that something serious happens and has to be used, your record keeping has to be strong. Of course, you don't react strongly. You know, you don't say if somebody's telling you something, are you sure? How dare you say that? Do you know what you're saying? You know, you can't jump to conclusions. You can't speculate, especially with a child. You can't tell them, yeah, don't worry, I won't tell anybody. You know, you don't want to lead the questions. You don't want to say, okay, then what happened? What did this person say? Then what did they do? They do. Because you don't want leading questions. Let the investigators do that. You don't want to make promises. But you want the children to obviously, or the adults to speak freely. And again, make notes while the child is speaking. I've never done that. I find that, especially for a child, quite intimidating. Do the note taking and everything afterwards. And that's how you should roughly handle disclosures. And again, this will be shown in the policy. What to do? I mean, you are professionals, you have your own instincts. Child or adult safety and life could be at risk. I've been in plenty of circumstances in school and out of school where they have been. And I think, you know, we all should acknowledge, and I know the UK government's new guidance is not that it will never happen, it is that it is happening and how will you deal with it. So, you know, remember somebody's life could be at risk. Share your concerns, always seek advice. There should be in your policy a group of people you can go to and talk to and say, this has just happened, this person said this, or this has happened in this country. What do you think? You need that board where you can discuss things, where people have experience, maybe more than yourselves. Of course, record any concerns. It's in your right and for your defense, you record concerns. And, you know, the motto in the UK at the moment and for safeguarding is, don't think, what if I'm wrong? Think, what if I'm right? And I think that's quite key here. You know, we should never be thinking that raising a safeguarding concern, oh, what will people say? You could be protecting someone, especially a child. And we need to take that responsibility on. Remember at the beginning, I said it's everybody's responsibility, not just the administrators or whoever. It is everybody's responsibility.
Sorry, Nadine. I just wanted to add something I thought would be relevant here from the training I've done in schools. That again, as you said, it's like something that they're pressing in the past couple of years. Our school had a safeguarding audit, and we did very well. But the one thing they said is, we as a staff should not assume other staff members aren't involved in abuse if somebody reports it because we know them. So we should come with a sort of a skeptical approach of, if it's somebody you know that's being reported, you shouldn't assume it can't happen here, it won't happen here. You should go, we were told, advised that we should take the approach that it could happen here. And just because we have a personal relationship with people, that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen because we know them.
No, you're absolutely right, Sarah Saber. And the change this year in safeguarding in the UK is exactly what Sarah Saber has just said. And that is, you don't assume it will never happen. You have to take every allegation or every issue that comes up, and it could be happening. And you're absolutely right, Sarah Saber. This year, that change has happened in the 2022 guidance. And it's sometimes it's quite challenging because you might be working with people, and again, this could happen in Humanity First, and you know the person really well, and you say, no, this could never happen. But it's in the UK, it is your legal responsibility to step away from the personal connection and treat everything like you need to refer it or take it seriously. Definitely. Jazakallah, Sarah Zaiba. So just looking at a referral, when you do pass it on to a Humanity First DSL or whatever the person is called, a good referral would be typed, simple language, provides details, gives a context and accurate evidence-based. Don't give your feelings. You've spoken to the child, or that adult and what was said. Forget the school bit there. Poor referral is, I was going to say like doctor's handwriting, but I won't. But, like my handwriting written so you can't read it. Use acronyms or jargon. Remember, especially referrals or evidence like this could be used in legal cases. So you want to be in a situation where somebody else can read it, properly, and you don't get calls to try to explain what you've written, because that's the last thing for anybody's well-being, wanting to have to actually do that. So again, you can look at this in more depth.
We have a
Finish
question
off.
from, we have a question from Muhammad Saab.
Yeah.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. I just want to know about the last, if you could put back the last image that we had. Something like, yes, so provide details such as father's name of an unborn child. What that means, I did not understand.
As I said, I wouldn't take this too prescriptive. This is more probably for a school setting. So if I did read this properly when I was making it, I probably would have left that out. So I would say ignore that. But Jazakallah for picking that up. Yeah.
Jazakallah, yes.
I leave with the last two slides, and we can have any open questions. And this is a government's mantra, and that is, don't think, what if I'm wrong? Do think, what if I'm right? And we have to change the mindset. These are children's, young adults' lives, and we cannot ruin them by thinking, oh, I can't talk about this, or I know the person, or nah, that could never be right. We have to think about the other side of what the negative effects happening to that child or young adult. And if we can start changing that mindset, if we can make that change, then inshallah, as a community, as Humanity First, as whoever, we can start moving in the right direction. I end with this picture, and I'm just going to stop sharing. Well, I won't stop sharing. I'm going to make it smaller so I can see everybody there. And there's a picture there. If I could ask anybody to tell me what they see and just explain what they see, and you can raise your hands if you want to, or I can pick someone, and that would be my last slide. And it's probably a good way of finishing. Does anybody want to say what they see in that box?
A dot in the right-hand corner.
Okay, a black dot in the right-hand corner, yeah? Is that right?
Zakla.
And all around it is white. Is that right? Just explain it.
It's just in isolation. There's nothing around it whatsoever that's connecting to the black dot.
Unfortunately, and you're right, unfortunately, that's what safeguarding abuse is. You have a box there full of white, could be perfect, lovely, doing all the best things that you can do, and there's this one small black dot that's an issue. And all everybody will notice is that black dot. They won't notice all the good work you've done or will do. They will notice that one small black dot. I could have used any color there, but the point I'm trying to make here is that, in that box, you only got that one small black dot, and that is what everybody will notice. And that's why safeguarding is so important. We have to know what we're doing. We have to have our policies. Everybody has to be trained, and there has to be responsibility. We are professionals, and we have to treat everything like something could be happening and take it seriously. That was my last slide. I thought I'd end with that because I think that conveys what I was thinking about safeguarding. Jazakallah, I'm open to any questions. I've gone 4 minutes over than I planned, so typical teacher style. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. If not, I leave your ties up with you.
I'll actually start off. Sorry, Ghulam Sahib, I'll just come straight to you afterwards, straight away, don't worry. But before we do, I just want to mention again, because I'm getting a lot of pings on WhatsApp, look, this is literally just the start of a new dawn of our safeguarding efforts. This session today, the revision of our policies, the supporting procedures, the appointment of international designated safeguarding leads, the appointment of nationally based safeguarding leads, training for every member in HF. That's the aspiration. That's what we're going to be working towards. So, a question from me, Nadeem Saab, is what can a HF branch do today? What can they do today to get them started on their safeguarding and compliance journey?
I think the first action HF should do is develop your policy. You have to have a policy. I've had to work blind because of lack of a policy. So you have to have that policy because that policy will change in time. But without the guidelines of what to do, how to do it, it won't educate you as administrators on what we're doing, and it won't engage the workers on what they should do. They cannot do safeguarding without having a policy, in my opinion. So in my opinion, the first thing you need to do is sort out a policy. As soon as you can sort out the policy, that will give you your processes, your procedures, and then you can start implementing that policy. And nationally, people can have their own policies or use a template that you provide them, and then the education can start. You can start the education earlier, like we've just done, yeah. But I'm delivering this, and in the back of my mind, I'm saying there's no policy, and I'm worrying about that there is no policy. So my first advice would get the policy done. That should be your highest priority.
Yeah. So we have a policy at the moment, but like I said, we need to have greater supporting procedures around it, and that's what we're working on. And the last question from me before I move on to Ghulam Saab, Khaled Saiba, and one other individual, I think Abdul Noor Saab. A common question that we get is that what happens if the individual who's put in place to deal with safeguarding issues is the perpetrator? Who checks the checker? What mechanisms can be put in place?
In your policy, you will have a process that deals with that. For example, in the Jamaat policy, if, God forbid, the DSL, designated safeguarding lead, is the person that an allegation has been made, then somebody else takes over. So there's processes there, and nearly every policy has that process in place.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll go into the first hand raised, and I think it's Ghulam Qadir Sahib.
Yes, Assalamualaikum. Yeah, I just wanted to first answer your question about the dots, and then I would like to comment on the safeguarding program. Firstly, the dots, in case it's related to your heading, remember it. That is very important. Like a professional person, like a doctor or consultant, like if we see anything in the body, of, for example, in the brain, he should not ignore it. Like teacher, he should not ignore if the child is not communicating properly. There are many examples. Same thing like in the character. Uh, if there is any dot on the character, that's very important. We investigate. For example, in the marriage, if there is something, they should have to be keep a secret. But my point is that in the safeguard program, that minor things can be a big issue, as you have highlighted many times. Because it's related to remember it, and that we should, the people, those professionals should not ignore it. Secondly, comment about the safeguarding. Mostly, you have spoken about the adult and small children. But in this society, like I am from the Asia, this society, those who are immigrant, particularly, and the Jamaat system also, in Islam also, other Muslims also, they are suffering like elderly people from their parents or from their offspring and from family relationship. There is a lot of issues. But once the matters go to Jamaat, they say, okay, we will do dua. Alhamdulillah, Allah Ta'ala will bless with this and that. I think if there is a tumor in the body, that should be removed safely, and then keep eyes on the rehabilitation process. So my suggestion is that we should, if you can do the full program on this elderly safeguarding, if you can do it. Thank you.
Jazakallah. Yeah, I think HF have future programs to, as I said, this was the basic training. It was literally a touching on safeguarding. Haven't even gone through long training, and I know other educators here would know when we do it in like school, they're much longer, and then you've got a course, and I do know HF is going to start a software course on it as well. So there is going to be more things coming up. Jazakallah.
Abdul Nusab, is that Abdul Nusab at Uni College?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Jazakallah, Taisab. First of all, I would like to congratulate organizers, and thank you very much. Thanks for organizing very informative session. Since we are representing from different countries and you're making your policy and procedures, I would request if every country they should send a specific requirements, like say for example in Australia, no one can work with the children under I think under 16 years of old, 16 years age, without having police clearance. So we must have a working with children check. And another thing is, if someone is working with elderly people, they must have police clearance, and without that, they cannot work. And that's what, like we make sure in our organizations that we should be keeping those records. I don't know about the other countries, if it is a requirement or not. But if you allow us, so I can give you a list of the things which you can add as specific to Australia. And then in that policy, maybe it will be very big, or if we can have a generic policy, then let us add other stuff, and then you can review that and you can approve. Because we received a privacy policy, while we were doing our website, and it was everything about UK, all the laws and everything about referring to UK. So we have to make lots of changes in that one. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah. Again, I'm sure Dayasam can answer this better than I, but I would say it should be the other way around. And what that means is, for example, Australia, you need to make your safeguarding policy that has all those aspects in it. You send that to HF International. They then work with their international policy and make sure it's working. I don't think, in my opinion, and please forgive me if I'm saying this wrong, I don't think HF International should make the policy for Australia. I think Australia should. Likewise, I don't think HF International should make the policy for Nigeria. Of course, guidance, support, and everything else should be there, but you know the laws of your country, like you just mentioned, and every country is different, unfortunately. So the laws are different. So if you make it, you will bring that out in the policy.
Absolutely right. So we will be providing guidelines and setting out a template as an example, but adapting that for your setting is absolutely essential.
Jazakallah. Thank you. That's what I was thinking. Okay, no, thanks a lot.
Cool. Thank you. Sarah Ward. Sarah Cyber.
Yes, alaikum jazakallah. I just wanted to say, it's not a question, but just a comment, that you're talking about the policy, and I also would like to second that that's really, really imperative, because at school, you're working with people, you're working with the parents, you have a relationship with them, and something might come up a child has said or done or you've noticed, and you know that that relationship might be damaged because you've got to note down something that's happened. But because I'm not the DSL, I'm not in charge of safeguarding, I just know I have to report it. This is the person I tell it to. I'm not a decision maker, I'm just telling what I've seen. And it shouldn't be underestimated how difficult that is to report what you've heard or seen, because you do second guess yourself. But if your policy and procedure are really clear, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to listen to that second guessing, because you know, I've heard this, I've seen this, this is what I'm going to do. This is the person I say to. And that person should be visible and should be known. We should have their photograph. We should know their contact number. It is, I mean, in our school, we've got it even in the toilets, in the staff toilets, because everybody has to know who we speak to. And it just removes that pressure and that second guessing. So that, I think, exactly as Nadeem Saab said, that the major part of the policy is, who am I going to tell? Who do I go to? And when you know that, we as people who are reporting are not making decisions, we're not making judgments, we're just reporting it, because it isn't easy to do. So I just thought I'd add that was what would make the safeguarding policy really good, would be those things.
Jazakallah, Sarah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. You're absolutely right. Don't know about putting my photo in the toilet, but yeah, I think the DSL needs to be out there. In the Jamaat policy, that is our phase 2. So we've rolled out our policy, we've rolled out our training. We're now going to be setting up local DSLs in the Jamaat UK, and then we're going to be putting out the pictures exactly like what you said. So absolutely, HF, inshallah, will do exactly the same. I assume they'll have photos. Everybody will know who the DSL or who's in charge, and they can have an open channel to them. Because I know in the last year, since I've taken this position, I've had to speak to so many people to get guidance, and I'm the DSL. So I've had to speak to legal people, I've had to speak to school people, I've had to speak to so many people with cases coming, because they're not easy, as you said. And, as you said, at the lower level, taking that initial decision is hard. At my level, making a judgment, I find impossible, because you have a brain, you have a heart, and they sometimes don't work together. So, Jazakallah, you're absolutely right. Shukriya.
Okay, the question's in the chat. Okay, so Yusuf Saab says we should also be mindful of vulnerable groups such as those who have special educational needs, as sometimes those elements are neglected, and especially in the humanitarian context as well. So Yusuf Saab has said the policy and processes should allow for this, and we should ensure carers, especially in our orphanages around the world and our schools, that these needs are taken care of and well understood.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely. I actually, there was a slide that I had on send children. I actually took it out because I said, you know, I don't want to go into it too much. But yeah, he's absolutely right. There has to be special consideration for send.
Okay, so again, just Nadeem Saab, I want to thank you for your time. I know you have multiple things going on today, especially with the Jamaat as well. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you everyone who's attended from across the world. I appreciate that some of the time zones has made some of you wake up really early or stay up really late. So again, thank you so much for attending. Jazakallah khair for that. And just be mindful, please, everyone, in terms of the applicability of safeguarding to our work. You know, Khalifa al-Masih said in our conference last year that you should never allow a trace of pride to enter your mind, thinking you are doing people you are serving a favor. And so it goes on to say, rather it is they who are doing you a favor with providing you an opportunity to gain the pleasure of Allah and reap His blessings. So it's our responsibility to put humanity first and to serve them with the utmost dignity as possible. So with that, Nadeem Saab, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.